I joked, "At this rate you'll never get married." She smiled and said, "Then maybe you're the reason." I should have kept my mouth shut that afternoon. I knew it the second the words left me, but by then it was too late, because Emily Carter had already heard them, and the way she looked at me after that made every small, safe corner of my life feel suddenly too small to hide in. We were standing in the middle of my half-painted living room in Burlington, Vermont, with old sheets spread across the floor, two paint cans open near the fireplace, and a ladder leaning against the wall like it had given up on me before I had even started. Emily had one hand on her hip and the other wrapped around a paint roller. There was a small streak of pale blue paint on her cheek, just under her eye, and somehow that made it harder to look away. I was supposed to be helping her paint the trim around the windows. Really, she was helping me, which had become the quiet problem between us. Every Saturday she showed up at my old house with coffee, a joke, and some reason that sounded practical. She said she had extra time. She said she liked painting. She said my ladder was safer with someone else holding it. She said a lot of things that made sense if I did not look too closely at them. That day, she was fixing the mess I had made near the bookshelf, laughing softly because I had managed to drip paint on the only part of the floor that was not covered. I looked at her and said, "At this rate you'll never get married, Emily. You spend every weekend fixing my house." I meant it as a joke. That is what I told myself, at least. She stopped rolling paint across the wall, not fast, not shocked. She just stopped like she had been waiting for me to finally say something careless enough to open the door. Then she smiled. It was not the kind of smile people give when something is funny. It was quieter than that, warmer, a little sad maybe, a little brave. "Then maybe you're the reason," she said. The room went still around me. Outside, a truck passed slowly on the street. Somewhere upstairs, the old pipes gave a tired knock. The paint roller in her hand dripped once onto the sheet between us, but neither of us moved. "My name is Ryan Miller. I am 36 years old, and until Emily said those 6 words, I had done a very good job of pretending my life was exactly how I wanted it. I owned a small used bookstore on Church Street called Miller's Books. It was narrow, quiet, and always smelled like paper, dust, and the cinnamon coffee from the shop next door. I bought it from an older man named Harold when he retired and moved to Maine. He told me the place needed someone patient. I told him patience was one of the few things I had. That was only partly true. I was patient with books, patient with broken shelves, patient with customers who came in looking for one thing and left with something completely different. I was patient with the old house I bought 2 years after my father died, even though the roof leaked, the porch sagged, and half the rooms looked like they were waiting for a family that never arrived. But I was not patient with feelings. Feelings made me act busy. That had always been my way. When something got too close, I found something that needed fixing. A shipment to unpack, a wall to repaint, a door hinge to replace, a reason to step away before anyone could notice I was scared. I had been engaged once, years before Emily came into my life. Her name was Laura. We were young enough to believe love could survive on good intentions and weekend plans. She wanted a bright apartment, dinner parties, children someday, and a man who could say what he felt before it turned into silence. I wanted those things too, or I thought I did. But when the wedding got close, I became a stranger even to myself. I worked late. I forgot calls. I told her I was tired when really I was terrified. One night she looked at me across our kitchen table and said, "Ryan, I feel like I'm trying to marry a man who is already leaving." She gave the ring back 2 weeks later. I did not fight for her. That is the part I still have trouble saying. I told myself I was respecting her choice, but the truth was easier and worse. I was relieved because her leaving meant I did not have to explain why I had been stepping backward for months. After that, I built a life that did not ask much from me. The bookstore, the old house, my routines, coffee at 7, open the shop at 9, close at 6, home by 6:30. Dinner standing at the counter, a little work on the house if I had the energy, bed before midnight, safe, quiet, predictable. Then Emily Carter walked into the bookstore one rainy Thursday in March and ruined all of that with a question about poetry. She was 33, a high school English teacher, and she had the kind of calm voice that made even ordinary words feel carefully chosen. She wore a yellow raincoat that day, her dark hair tucked under the hood, and she carried a canvas bag filled with papers to grade. She asked if I had a used copy of Mary Oliver for her classroom. I did. She smiled when I found it. That should have been the whole story. But she came back the next week for 2 novels, then again for a book of essays. Then again just before closing, saying she needed something for a student who hated reading but liked sad stories with people who make bad choices. Have a whole shelf for that, I told her. She laughed, and I remember looking down at the counter because her laugh felt like sunlight hitting a room I had kept shut for too long. For a while she was just a customer, a regular one, the kind I looked forward to seeing but did not admit it even to myself. She would come in after school, tired but smiling, with a red pen clipped to her sweater and chalk dust sometimes on her fingers. She asked good questions. She remembered things I said. She noticed when I rearranged the front table. In May, she found out I lived 3 blocks from her aunt. I did not tell her that on purpose. She saw me carrying groceries near Maple Avenue and called my name from across the street. I almost dropped a bag of apples. "You live here?" she asked. "Unfortunately," I said, looking at my old house behind me. She studied the peeling paint on the porch and the loose shutter by the upstairs window. "It has good bones," she said. "That's what people say when they mean it looks terrible." She smiled. "No, I mean it has good bones." The next Saturday, she appeared at my gate with 2 coffees and a small paper bag from the bakery. "I was walking by," she said. "No one walks by this street by accident. I took the long way." That was how it started. She came by for coffee, then to look at the porch, then to help me choose paint colors because I had somehow picked 3 shades of gray that all looked like wet sidewalk. She said the living room needed something softer. I said softer sounded dangerous. She said paint was not dangerous unless I planned to drink it. By June, she was showing up most Saturdays. I never asked her to. That detail matters. I let her come, but I never invited her. I made room for her without admitting I wanted her there. She helped sand the porch railing. She held the flashlight when I fixed the pantry shelf. She brought muffins the morning the power went out and sat with me on the back steps while the whole block waited for the lights to return. She told me about her students, about the boy who wrote poems but pretended they were song lyrics, about the girl who read ahead and then tried not to spoil the endings. I told her about the bookstore, about my father, about the house, but only the easy parts, the safe parts. She never pushed. That was the thing about Emily. She did not try to break down locked doors. She just sat outside them with patience and warm coffee until you started to wonder why you had locked them in the first place. And then came that Saturday in July. The living room windows were open, and summer air moved through the house carrying the smell of cut grass and fresh paint. Emily was wearing old jeans and one of my faded bookstore t-shirts because she had gotten paint on her blouse earlier and I had handed it to her without thinking. Seeing her in it did something strange to my chest, something I did not have a name for yet. She stood near the wall, painting carefully around the window frame, humming under her breath. I was supposed to be taping the baseboard, but I had been watching her more than working. That was when I made the joke. "At this rate, you'll never get married, Emily. You spend every weekend fixing my house." She turned to me with that soft smile. "Then maybe you're the reason." I froze. For 1 second, maybe 2, I thought I could still laugh it off. I could say something light. I could change the subject. I could point at the paint on her cheek and pretend my heart had not just dropped straight through the floor, but she kept looking at me, not demanding, not embarrassed, just honest. And that was worse because I had built my whole life around avoiding honest moments. "Emily," I said, but her name came out too quiet. She looked down at the roller, then back at me. "You don't have to say anything." That should have made it easier. It did not. Because the truth was, I had something to say. I had probably had it for weeks. Maybe since the first time she laughed in the bookstore. Maybe since she stood outside my house and said it had good bones. Maybe since she started coming every Saturday with reasons that were true, but never the whole truth. I just did not know how to say it without changing everything. So I did what I always did. I stepped back. I should get more tape from the kitchen, I said. There was already tape on the floor beside me. Emily saw it. Of course she did. Her smile faded just a little, but she nodded as if I had given her an answer, even though all I had given her was a door closing from the inside. I walked into the kitchen and stood there with one hand on the counter, breathing like I had run up a hill. Through the doorway, I could hear the soft roll of paint against the wall starting again. She did not leave right away. That almost hurt more. She stayed for another hour, finished the window trim, washed the roller in the sink, and thanked me for the coffee like it had been any other Saturday. Then she picked up her bag from the chair and walked to the front door. I followed her because not following her felt wrong, but saying anything felt impossible. At the door, she turned back. The late afternoon light was behind her, soft around her hair, and for a second she looked like someone already halfway gone. "Ryan," she said. "Yeah." She held my eyes. "I know you heard me." I swallowed. I did. She nodded once like that was all she needed to know. Then she opened the door and stepped onto the porch. I watched her walk down the path, past the uneven gate and onto the sidewalk. She did not look back. For the first time since I bought that house, it felt too quiet. I went back into the living room and stood in the middle of the half-painted walls. Her roller was clean. The coffee cup she had used was still on the mantel. My old t-shirt was folded over the back of the chair because she had changed before leaving. Everything looked normal. Nothing was normal. I picked up the roll of tape from the floor, the one I had pretended to need from the kitchen, and held it in my hand for a long time. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. I stared at her name on the screen until it blurred a little. It said, "I'm not asking you to be brave today. I just need to know if you ever will be." I read Emily's message at least 20 times before I answered it. I stood in the middle of my living room, surrounded by pale blue walls and the smell of fresh paint, holding my phone like it was heavier than it had any right to be. "I'm not asking you to be brave today. I just need to know if you ever will be." That was the kind of question a person could not answer with a joke. Believe me, I tried to find one. My mind reached for something easy, something light, something that could soften the edge of what she had said. But every sentence I thought of felt small and cowardly. I typed, "I don't know." Then I deleted it. I typed, "I want to be." Then I deleted that too, because wanting something and doing something are not the same thing, and I had spent too much of my life hiding inside the space between them. Finally, I wrote, "I heard you. I'm sorry I stepped back." I stared at it for a long time before I sent it. Her reply came 5 minutes later. "I know." That was all, not angry, not cold. Just 2 words that somehow made me feel worse because they sounded like she had already understood me before I understood myself. I did not sleep much that night. I lay in bed listening to the old house settle around me, the kind of small sounds I usually found comforting. A board creaked in the hallway. The refrigerator hummed downstairs. A car passed outside and sent a brief wash of light across the ceiling. Every sound felt like a question. By morning, I had decided 3 different things and taken back all of them. I would go to her house and explain everything. No, I would give her space. No, I would write a letter because spoken words had never been kind to me when they mattered. No, a letter would look like another way to avoid standing in front of her. So I went to the bookstore early. That was what I did when I did not know what to do. I went where the shelves were straight and the lights were warm and the work had clear answers. A book either belonged in fiction or it did not. A shipment either had to be unpacked or it did not. The register either balanced or it did not. People were harder. Feelings were worse. I opened the shop at 8:30, half an hour before usual. I turned on the front lights, swept the floor, arranged the display table, and moved 3 novels from one shelf to another for no reason except that my hands needed something to do. Around 10, my sister Megan called. Megan lived in Boston with her husband and 2 sons. She was younger than me by 4 years and had always been better at saying things directly. Our mother used to say Megan was born with her heart in her hands and I was born with mine locked in a drawer. I almost did not answer. Then I did. "You sound terrible," she said after I said hello. "Good morning to you too." "What happened?" "Nothing. Ryan." That was all she had to say. Just my name in that older sister tone even though she was younger. I sat behind the counter and looked out the front window at people walking past with iced coffees and shopping bags. "There's someone," I said. Megan went quiet for half a second. "Okay." "She's a teacher. She comes into the store. She's been helping me with the house." "Helping you with the house how?" "Painting, porch repairs, small things." "How long?" "A couple of months." Megan made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "A woman has been spending her Saturdays painting your house for 2 months, and you are just now telling me there's someone." "It wasn't like that." "Wasn't it?" I rubbed my forehead. "She said something yesterday." "What did she say?" "I told her, the joke I made, Emily's answer, the message after she left." Megan did not interrupt, which made me nervous because Megan only stayed quiet when she was preparing to say something I would not enjoy. Finally, she said, "Do you like her?" "Yes." The answer came out before I could dress it up. I sat there, surprised by how simple it sounded once I stopped fighting it. Megan's voice softened. "Then what are you doing?" "I don't know." "You do know. You're doing the thing you do." "The thing I do." "You get close enough to feel wanted. Then you panic because being wanted means someone might expect you to stay." I closed my eyes. "I stayed after Dad got sick," I said quietly. "I know," she said. "You stayed for all of us. You handled the hospital bills, the house sale, Mom's appointments, everything. But that was crisis staying, Ryan. That was responsibility. You know how to stay when people need you. You don't know how to stay when someone simply wants you." I did not answer. There are some truths that do not need to be loud to knock the air out of a room. Megan sighed. "Laura hurt you, but you also hurt her by leaving before you left. You know that, right?" "I know. And maybe this Emily is not Laura. Maybe she is not asking you to become someone else overnight. Maybe she is asking you to stop hiding behind paint cans and broken shelves." I looked toward the front table, where a stack of poetry books sat in the morning light. The Mary Oliver section was still 1 book shorter because of Emily. "She asked if I'll ever be brave," I said. "Then don't answer with words first," Megan said. "Answer with something that costs you a little." After we hung up, I sat behind the counter for a long time thinking about that. Something that costs you a little. For most people, maybe bravery looked big. A speech, a kiss in the rain, a run to the airport. I sold enough novels to know how people like to imagine courage. For me, courage looked smaller and more embarrassing. It looked like walking 3 blocks to Emily's house without a tool in my hand and without an excuse in my pocket. But I did not do it that day. I wish I could say I did. I wish I could say I locked the shop, marched to her door and told her the truth while the sun was still high. But I did not. I worked. I answered customers. I sold books. I pretended my chest did not tighten every time the bell above the door rang. Emily did not come in, not that day, not Monday either. On Tuesday she came in at 4:15, wearing a soft green sweater and carrying her canvas school bag. I knew the time because I looked at the clock as soon as the bell rang, like my body had been waiting for her before my mind could admit it. She smiled politely, politely. That was new and I hated it. "Hi," she said. "Hi." She moved toward the poetry shelf, not the counter. Usually she came to the counter first. Usually she asked how the house was coming along, or told me something one of her students had said, or placed her bag on the chair near the register like she planned to stay a while. That day she kept the bag on her shoulder. I watched her scan the shelves. I should have said something then, I knew it. The moment was there, open and waiting. Instead, I asked, looking for anything specific. She glanced over, something for class. Right. She picked up a book, read the back, put it down, picked up another. The space between us felt crowded with everything we were not saying. Finally, I stepped out from behind the counter. Emily. She turned. I had no speech ready, no perfect sentence, no safe opening. My mouth felt dry and my hands were doing that stupid thing where they wanted to fix something just to avoid being still. I was scared, I said. Her face changed just a little. I kept going before I could stop myself. When you said what you said on Saturday, I heard you. I heard you more clearly than I wanted to. And I stepped back because that's what I do when something matters. I make a joke, then I disappear behind some small task like tape or paint or work. She stayed quiet. A customer near the front flipped through a cookbook, completely unaware that my whole life was trying to turn itself inside out near the poetry shelf. I'm not good at this, I said. I know that's not an excuse. No, she said softly, it is. I nodded, I know. She looked down at the book in her hand. I didn't say it to trap you, Ryan. I know. I said it because I was tired of pretending. I only came over because your house needed help. There it was, the sentence I had been both hoping for and fearing. My heart beat once hard. And I was tired of pretending I didn't know, I said. She looked at me then. I took one more step closer, leaving enough space that she could choose what to do with it. I don't know how to be brave all at once, I said, but I want to learn, and I want to learn with you if you still want to be there while I figure it out. For a moment she did not answer. Then she gave me a small, sad smile. Ryan, I can be patient. I think I've proved that. You have. But I can't be the only brave one. I nodded because she was right. I know. She held the book against her chest, then asked me something. I blinked. What? Ask me something without hiding it inside a joke. The store seemed to go completely quiet, even though it had not. I could hear the soft hum of the lights, the pages turning near the front, the traffic outside. My voice came out low. Would you have dinner with me on Friday? Emily's eyes softened. Are you asking because you feel guilty? No. Are you asking because Megan told you to? I stared at her. How did you know I talked to Megan? Because you look like someone's sister recently told him the truth. Despite everything, I laughed. So did she. The laugh broke something open between us. Not all the way, not enough to fix everything, but enough to let air back into the room. No, I said. I'm asking because I want to sit across from you without pretending you're there to choose paint colors. She looked at me for a long second, then she nodded. Friday. I breathed for what felt like the first time since Saturday. She bought the poetry book, even though I offered to give it to her. She refused, saying small bookstores survived because people paid for books, not because nervous men tried to be charming at the register. When she left, she looked back once through the window, just once, but it was enough. Friday came slowly. I changed my shirt 3 times. I cleaned the kitchen even though we were not eating at my house. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early and sat in my truck for 10 of them, giving myself a quiet lecture about not running away from a woman who had already seen more of me than I meant to show. We met at a small place near Lake Champlain, the kind with wooden tables, low lights and windows that caught the last color of the evening sky. Emily arrived wearing a navy dress and a jean jacket, her hair loose around her shoulders. I stood too fast and hit my knee on the table. She smiled. Smooth. I was saving that for later, but panic moved the schedule up. She laughed and the sound settled me. Dinner was simple, pasta for her, chicken for me. We talked about her students, the bookstore, the house, the terrible wallpaper I still needed to remove from the upstairs hallway. For a while it felt easy. Then she asked, what happened with Laura? I looked down at my plate. There it was, the old door. I could have given the short answer, the polite one. We wanted different things. It did not work out. People say those things because they are smooth enough to pass through a room without cutting anyone. But Emily had asked me not to make her the only brave one, so I told her the truth. I left before I left, I said. She noticed before I admitted it. She wanted a life with me and I wanted it too, but when it got close, I panicked. I made myself busy. I made her feel alone. Then when she ended it, I acted like it was something that happened to me instead of something I helped cause. Emily listened without interrupting. "I'm sorry," she said. "For me or for her?" "For both of you." That answer almost broke me. After dinner, we walked along the lake. The air was cool, and lights from the restaurants behind us reflected on the water in thin, shaking lines. Emily walked beside me with her arms folded lightly against the breeze. I wanted to hold her hand. I thought about it for half a block. Then she said, "Ryan, are you thinking about holding my hand or solving a tax problem?" I looked at her. "Is it that obvious?" "Yes." I held out my hand. She looked at it, then at me. "See, brave." "It's a hand, Emily." "Tonight it is." She placed her hand in mine. It was such a small thing. 5 fingers closing around mine, warm skin. A quiet step closer, but something in me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough that the world felt less like a place I had to manage alone. We walked like that until the wind got colder. When I drove her home, I parked outside her small white house with the blue door and the flower pots lined neatly along the steps. The porch light was on. For a moment, neither of us moved. "I had a good time," she said. "Me too." She unbuckled her seat belt, then paused. "Don't disappear tomorrow." The sentence was gentle, but it landed hard. I looked at her. "I won't." She searched my face like she wanted to believe me, but needed me to understand that belief was not a toy. "Okay," she said. Then she leaned over and kissed my cheek. Not my mouth. Not yet. Just my cheek, soft and quick near the corner of my jaw, but I felt it everywhere. She got out and walked up the steps. At the door, she turned and waved once before going inside. I sat in the truck for a long time after her porch light went off. The next morning, I woke early. My first instinct was to make coffee, open the shop records, and create some reason to stay busy until the feeling passed. Instead, I picked up my phone and texted her. "Coffee on my porch. No repairs, no paint, just coffee." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Her reply came through. "Now that sounds dangerous." I smiled. A second message followed. "I'll be there in 20 minutes." I set the phone down and looked around my kitchen. The house was still old. The porch still needed work. The upstairs hallway still had terrible wallpaper, and the living room still had one wall left unpainted. Nothing was finished. But for the first time, that did not feel like failure. It felt like a place where something could begin. Emily came to my porch that morning with 2 coffees instead of 1, like she had already guessed I would forget to make my own. She was wearing a soft gray sweater, old jeans, and her hair was tied back in a loose knot that looked like it had taken no effort at all, which I knew meant it probably had. She stopped at the bottom step and looked at me. "No tools?" she asked. I lifted both hands. "No tools." "No paint." "No paint." "No hidden shelf that needs fixing." "Not unless you count me." She smiled at that, but it was not a joking smile. It was the kind that noticed the truth inside the joke and let it stay there without making me feel foolish for saying it. She came up the steps and handed me a cup. We sat side by side on the old porch swing that had come with the house. It creaked under us in a way that made me promise silently to fix it. Then I caught myself and did nothing. For once, I let something creak. The morning was cool and bright. A neighbor across the street watered flowers. A dog barked twice and then seemed to lose interest. The world was doing its normal Saturday things, but I felt like I was sitting in a new version of it. For a while, we drank coffee without talking. That was one of the first things I loved about Emily, though I did not use that word yet. She knew how to be quiet beside a person. Not cold quiet, not uncomfortable quiet, just quiet that felt like a blanket over your knees. After a few minutes, she leaned back and looked at the living room window through the open door. "You still have 1 wall left," she said. "I know." "Is that going to bother you?" "Probably." "Are you going to ask me to help?" I looked at her. "Not today." Her eyes softened. "Good answer." I took a sip of coffee. I might ask next week. That's also a good answer. I laughed quietly. You grade everything, don't you? Only when someone needs feedback. And how am I doing? She turned slightly toward me, one shoulder against the back of the swing. Better than you think, slower than I'd like. That sounds fair. It is. The swing moved gently beneath us. For once, I did not feel the need to fill the space with something useful. I did not reach for a story about the bookstore or the porch or the house. I just sat there with her, letting the coffee warm my hands and the morning settle around us. Then she said, I meant what I said last night. I looked at her. Don't disappear, she said. I know. I don't need perfect, Ryan. I don't even trust perfect. But I do need honest. If you get scared, say you're scared. If you need time, say you need time. But don't turn into a locked door and expect me to keep knocking forever. I stared down into my coffee. It would have been easy to feel accused. Part of me wanted to. That old defensive part that looked for unfairness so I could protect myself from changing. But she was not being unfair. She was telling me where the edge was before I stepped over it. I can do that, I said. She waited. I corrected myself. I will try to do that. She nodded. That's more honest. After that, things began, not quickly but clearly. We did not become one of those couples who fall into each other and forget the rest of the world. Emily still had papers to grade and lesson plans to write. I still had a store to run and a house that seemed to create new problems every time I fixed an old one. But there was a shape to us now. A rhythm. Tuesday evenings, she came by the bookstore after school, and we walked to the little Thai place around the corner if neither of us was too tired. Thursday nights, I went to her house, and she made tea while grading essays at the kitchen table. I would sit across from her with invoices or a book I pretended to read, mostly watching the way she pressed her pen to her lips when she was thinking. On Saturdays, we worked on the house, but now I asked. That mattered. The first time I said, would you help me finish the living room wall? She smiled like I had handed her something much bigger than a paint roller. Yes, she said, I would. We finished the wall in less than 2 hours. Pale blue, the color she had chosen. I stood in the doorway afterward looking at the room and I felt something strange rise in my chest. It looks like someone lives here, she said. I nodded. Yeah. She looked at me. Is that good? I took my time answering because the truth deserved a careful hand. I think it scares me because it's good. She did not touch me right away. She just stood beside me and let the words be enough. Then she slipped her hand into mine. By August, the house had changed in ways that were easy to see and in ways that were not. The porch railing was sanded and stained. The living room was finished. The old curtains were gone, replaced by simple white ones Emily helped me choose, even though she said my first choice looked like something from a motel that had given up. There were books on the coffee table that were not mine. A green sweater folded over the back of a chair. A mug in the cabinet with small blue flowers on it that Emily started using every time she came over and somehow never took home. I did not mention that I liked seeing it there. She noticed anyway. One evening she opened the cabinet and saw the mug on the front shelf, easy to reach. She looked at me over her shoulder. You moved it. It was in the back. It was fine in the back. You use it. She smiled, so you made room. I leaned against the counter. For a mug. Sure, she said, for a mug. The first time she kissed me on the mouth, it was raining. Not movie rain, not loud thunder or dramatic wind. Just a steady summer rain that softened the windows and made the whole house smell like wet wood and coffee. She had come over after school, tired from a staff meeting that had gone too long. I made dinner, which meant I burned one side of the chicken and tried to hide it under sauce. She ate it anyway. Afterward, we stood at the sink washing dishes. She washed. I dried. Our shoulders bumped every few minutes and neither of us moved away. You know, she said, handing me a plate, this is the first time you cooked for me. I use the word cooked loosely. I noticed. That bad? She smiled. No, just very you. I set the plate in the cabinet. That sounds like an insult wearing a nice coat. It's not. She turned off the water and dried her hands slowly. I was still holding the dish towel when she turned toward me. There was a quiet look in her eyes, clear and steady, and I knew before she moved what was about to happen. I could have leaned away. The old part of me still knew how. Instead, I stayed. She stepped closer, lifted one hand to my chest, and kissed me. It was soft, slow, so simple that it nearly undid me. There was no rush in it, no demand. Just Emily, close enough for me to feel her breath, choosing me in a kitchen with rain on the windows and a burned pan soaking in the sink. When she pulled back, I did not know what to say. So for once I said the truest thing. I'm glad you did that. She laughed, her forehead nearly touching mine. I could tell you were thinking about it too hard. I think about most things too hard. I know. Her hand stayed on my chest, and mine found her waist like it had been waiting for permission. We stood there for a long time, not saying much, while the rain tapped softly against the glass. By September, people started noticing. Mrs. Donovan, who ran the flower shop across from my bookstore, saw Emily leaving the shop one evening with her hand tucked into mine, and smiled so widely I knew the whole street would know by morning. My regular customer, Mr. Phelps, came in 2 days later and asked if I had finally stopped pretending the teacher was just here for books. I told him to buy something or leave. He bought 2 mysteries and laughed the whole time. Megan drove up from Boston one weekend with her husband and boys. She met Emily on a Saturday afternoon, and I watched the 2 of them talk on the porch while my nephews chased each other around the yard with sticks they were not supposed to have. Megan looked at Emily the way sisters look at women who might matter to their brothers, kindly but not easily fooled. Later, when Emily went inside to help the boys find juice, Megan stood beside me near the steps. "She's good," she said. "She is. For you, I mean." I looked through the screen door. Emily was kneeling in the kitchen, listening seriously while my younger nephew explained something about dinosaurs. She nodded like his story was important because to him it was. "She's good without me too," I said. Megan looked at me then and her face softened. "That might be the healthiest thing you've ever said." I smiled, but something in my chest tightened, because happiness had started to feel real, and real things still scared me. The trouble came in October, though it did not look like trouble at first. It looked like an envelope. Emily got it on a Friday afternoon. I was at the bookstore when she came in after school holding a white envelope against her chest. Her face was careful in a way I knew too well because I had worn that same face many times. "What is it?" I asked. She set the envelope on the counter. "An offer," she said, "from a private school in Portland, Maine, not Oregon." I looked at the envelope. "That's good, right?" "It is, very good, better pay, smaller classes, more freedom with the curriculum." I nodded slowly. "Portland is a few hours away." 3.5. "That's more than a few." She gave a small smile, but it did not stay. "When would it start?" "January." The store felt suddenly too warm. I looked down at the envelope again, and I hated how fast the old fear moved inside me. It was like a door slamming in a house I thought I had renovated. My mind went straight to distance, endings, slow replies, weekends that turned into plans that turned into fewer plans. I saw the whole loss before anything had even happened. Emily watched me carefully. "Ryan," she said. "I'm happy for you," I said too fast. Her face changed. The old me had spoken. Not because the words were false, but because they were incomplete, and incomplete truth can feel like a lie when someone knows you well enough. "I am," I said, trying again. "I mean it. You deserve that." But I looked at the window, at the street outside, at anything that was not her face. "But I'm scared," I said. The words came out rough, but they came out. Emily's shoulders lowered a little, like she had been holding her breath. "Thank you for saying that." I let out a breath. "I hate that I'm scared. It feels selfish." "It's not selfish to feel it. It would be selfish to hide it and punish me for guessing." That landed. I nodded. She touched the envelope with one finger. "I haven't said yes." I looked at her. I also haven't said no, she added, and I don't want to make the choice around your fear. I want to make it with the truth in the room. I swallowed. What truth? That I love teaching, that this job could be good for me, that I love Burlington too, that I love my students here, that I care about you, and that I don't know yet what all of that means. Care about you, she did not say love, not then. And somehow that made it more honest. I nodded again because speaking felt dangerous. She reached across the counter and took my hand. Don't disappear, she said. I looked at our hands. I won't. But that night after she went home, I sat alone in my living room and the house felt too quiet in the old way. The blue walls looked dim in the lamplight. Her mug was in the cabinet. Her sweater was still folded over the chair. The whole place had evidence of her, and suddenly every small sign of her felt like something I could lose. I wanted to text her. I wanted to tell her not to go. I wanted to tell her to take the job because I loved her and did not want to hold her back. I wanted 5 different things and every one of them hurt, so I did the worst possible thing. I said nothing. Saturday morning came cold and gray. Emily usually arrived around 9 if we had plans, but we had not made plans. I still looked out the window at 8:55. Then 9:10. Then 9:40. She did not come. At 10:15 my phone buzzed. Her message said, "I'm going to take the weekend to think. I think you should too." I read it standing in the kitchen, one hand on the counter, feeling like the house had shifted under me. I had promised not to disappear, but maybe silence had its own way of leaving. The bookstore was closed on Sunday, so the next morning I drove to my father's old storage unit outside town. I had not been there in months. Most of what remained inside was useless but hard to throw away. Boxes of tools, fishing gear, a cracked mirror, a wooden rocking chair he always meant to fix. The chair sat near the back under an old blanket. I pulled it into the light and ran my hand over the broken armrest. My father had been a quiet man. Good, but quiet. He loved us in finished repairs and paid bills and oil changes. When he got sick, I became quiet too, as if silence was something fathers passed down without meaning to. I stood there looking at the chair and thought about Emily telling me she needed truth in the room. Then I saw a small box beside the chair. Inside was a stack of postcards my mother had sent my father before they married, back when she lived in New Hampshire for a summer job and he stayed in Vermont. I had seen them once years ago but had forgotten they existed. I sat on an upside-down crate and read them. They were simple. Weather, work, missing you. Wish you were here. Save me a seat on the porch. And on the last one, in my mother's neat handwriting, she had written, I do not need you to pull me back. I need to know you will still be there when I come home. I read that line 3 times. Then I sat in that storage unit surrounded by dust and old tools and cried harder than I had cried in years. Not because of my mother, not only because of my father, but because I finally understood that loving someone did not mean holding them still. It meant becoming the kind of place they could return to without fear. That evening I went home and fixed the porch swing. It took an hour. New bolts, sanded hinge, tightened chain. A small repair, nothing grand. But when it was done, I sat on it and felt it hold my weight without creaking. Then I took out my phone and called Emily. She answered on the 4th ring. Hi, she said. Her voice was careful. I don't want to talk you out of Portland, I said. There was silence. I gripped the phone tighter. And I don't want to pretend I'm not afraid of it. I am. I'm afraid you'll go and realize your life is bigger there. I'm afraid I'll become someone you used to know in Burlington. I'm afraid of losing this before I've even learned how to hold it right. My voice shook, but I kept going. But I don't want my fear to be the loudest thing in the room. You should choose what is good for you. And if you choose Portland, I want to be brave enough to stay. Not in the easy way, in the real way. Emily did not speak for a long moment. Then she said softly, What does stay mean? I looked at the porch railing, the street, the evening sky. It means I visit. It means you visit. It means I don't turn distance into proof that I should leave first. It means I tell you when I miss you instead of acting busy. It means I keep making room. Her breath moved quietly through the phone. And if I don't choose Portland, she asked, then I keep making room anyway. Another silence, then she said, "Ryan. Yeah, I need to tell you something." My heart started beating hard. "I got another call today," she said. "The principal at my school, the department chair is leaving after winter break. They want me to apply." I sat still. "It would mean staying," she said. "More responsibility, better pay, not as much as Portland but close, and I think I want it." I think I wanted to know if staying was a choice I was making for myself, or if I was making it because I was afraid you couldn't handle anything else. I closed my eyes, and now, I asked, now I think maybe staying could be brave too. I let out a breath I had been holding for 2 days. "Can I come over?" I asked. She was quiet for just a second, then she said yes. I was at her house in 10 minutes. She opened the door before I knocked, wearing a cream sweater and tired eyes. For a second we just looked at each other. Then she stepped outside onto the porch. "I missed you," I said. Her eyes filled a little, but she smiled. That was a good start. "I'm sorry I went quiet." "I know. I'm trying." "I know that too." The porch light made her face look soft and warm. I wanted to promise her everything right there, every future version of myself, every brave thing I had not yet learned how to do, but I knew better now. Big promises were easy when emotion was high. It was the small ones that mattered in the morning, so I held out my hand. "Walk with me." She looked at my hand, then placed hers in it. We walked through the quiet streets of Burlington with leaves blowing along the sidewalks and porch lights glowing on old houses. We did not solve everything. We did not need to. She told me about the department chair position. I told her about the postcards. She laughed when I admitted I had fixed the porch swing instead of writing a speech. "That is the most Ryan thing I've ever heard," she said. "Is that good?" She squeezed my hand. "It is tonight." When we got back to her house, she stopped at the bottom of the steps. "I haven't made my final decision," she said. "I know. And I need you to understand that my life can't become smaller just because you're learning how to be loved." The sentence hurt, but in the clean way truth hurts when it is saving you from becoming worse. "I understand," I said. She searched my face. Then she stepped closer and kissed me. This kiss was different from the first one, deeper, not rushed but less careful. Her hands touched my coat and mine found her back, and for a few seconds the whole cold October night narrowed down to the warmth of her mouth and the quiet sound she made when I pulled her closer. When she stepped back, her eyes were bright. "I'm not going anywhere tonight," she said. I smiled. "That's enough." But the next morning, everything changed again. I was opening the bookstore when I saw the envelope pushed under the front door. Plain white. No stamp. My name written across the front in handwriting I did not recognize. Inside was one page. It said, "Ask Emily what really happened in Portland 2 years ago before you build your future around her." I read it once, then again. The shop lights hummed above me. Outside, the town was waking up like any normal morning, but the paper shook in my hand. And for the first time since Emily had smiled at me in that half-painted room, I wondered if there was a part of her story she had been as afraid to tell as I had been to hear. I stood in the bookstore with that paper in my hand, and for one terrible minute I became the old version of myself again. The man who looked for the exit before he looked for the truth. Ask Emily what really happened in Portland 2 years ago before you build your future around her. The words sat on the page like a warning. No signature. No explanation. Just enough to make my mind fill in the empty spaces with every fear it knew how to create. I folded the paper once, then unfolded it. My hands felt cold. The store was quiet, too quiet, even with the lights on and the traffic moving outside. A woman passed the front window holding a cup of coffee, and I remember thinking how strange it was that the rest of the world did not stop just because mine had found a new way to shake. My first instinct was not noble. I wanted to put the paper in a drawer and act normal. I wanted to wait until Emily came in and watch her face carefully, collecting evidence like a coward. I wanted to let suspicion do the asking so I would not have to. Then I heard her voice in my head. "Don't turn into a locked door and expect me to keep knocking forever." I sat behind the counter and stared at the paper until the first customer came in. I sold 2 books, gave the wrong change, apologized, fixed it, and then locked the front door 10 minutes after opening. I put a note in the window, "Back soon." Then I took the paper, walked out into the cold morning, and went straight to Emily's school. The front office called her down during her planning period. I waited near the trophy case, trying not to look like a man carrying bad news in his coat pocket. When she came around the corner, she smiled at first. Then she saw my face. "What happened?" she asked. I pulled the paper from my pocket and handed it to her. She read it once. The color left her face slowly. That scared me more than anger would have. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "Under the bookstore door this morning." She looked at the paper again, then closed her eyes for a second. I waited. Every old fear in me was shouting, but I stayed quiet. When she opened her eyes, they were wet. "I was going to tell you," she said. My chest tightened. "When?" "Before I made a decision about the job, before anything got more serious." She swallowed. "I just kept waiting for the right time, and then the right time became too late." The hallway around us was empty, but still it felt too public. I looked toward the office. "Can we go somewhere?" She nodded. We walked outside to the small courtyard behind the school. The air was cold and the trees had almost lost all their leaves. Emily wrapped her arms around herself and stood near a bench. I did not sit. Neither did she. "2 years ago," she said, "I was engaged." I felt the sentence land, but I did not move. His name was Mark. He taught history at the private school in Portland. That's how I knew about the place. We met at a teachers' conference. He was charming, smart, the kind of person everyone liked right away. She looked down at the paper in her hand. "I moved there for him, not officially at first. I told everyone it was for a teaching opportunity, and that was partly true. But the truth was, I built my whole plan around him." Her voice shook slightly. 3 months before the wedding, I found out he had been seeing someone else. Not once, not a mistake, for most of our engagement. I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry," I said. She nodded but kept going, like if she stopped, she might not start again. I left Portland in one day, packed what I could, drove back to Burlington, and told people the job had not worked out. I did not want to explain how foolish I felt. I did not want to be the woman people pitied, so I made it smaller, cleaner, easier to carry. The paper trembled in her fingers. When this new offer came, I panicked. Not because of the job, because Portland still felt like a place where I had been stupid. And then I met you, and suddenly staying here did not feel like hiding anymore. It felt good. But I was afraid if I told you, you would think I was choosing Burlington because I was still broken. I looked at her then, really looked. The hurt in her face was not guilt, it was fear, and I knew that fear. I had lived with my own version of it for years. "Who sent the note?" I asked. "I don't know for sure." She wiped under one eye quickly. "But I can guess. Mark works at that school. He probably heard my name came up again." The cold air moved between us. I thought about the note, about its wording, about the way it had tried to make her past sound like a crime instead of a wound. "Emily," I said quietly. She looked at me like she was bracing for impact. I stepped closer. "I wish you had told me." "I know. But I understand why you didn't." Her face broke a little. "I'm not mad that you were hurt before me," I said. "I'm not mad that you needed time to tell me. I'm mad that someone knew exactly where to push and thought it would work." She looked down and a tear slipped free. "It almost did," she whispered. "The honesty of that hurt." "Yes," I said, "it almost did." She looked at me. "But it didn't," I said. "I brought it to you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Emily stepped forward and pressed her face against my coat. I wrapped my arms around her, and she held on like she had been standing alone for longer than I knew. "I'm scared too," she said against my chest. "I know. I don't want either of us to keep paying for what other people did." That sentence stayed with me. I held her tighter. "We won't," I said. "Not if we keep telling the truth before fear gets creative." She laughed once, soft and shaky. That sounds like something a bookstore owner would say. It sounded better in my head. No, she said, looking up at me, it's good. She did not take the Portland job. Not because of me. I need that part to be clear. She took 3 more weeks to decide. She visited the school. She spoke to the principal. She asked hard questions. She even called someone she trusted who had worked there and got the truth about the place without Mark's shadow over it. Then she applied for the department chair position in Burlington. She got it in December. The night she found out, she came into the bookstore just before closing, cheeks red from the cold, eyes bright in a way I had started to recognize as happiness she was trying to keep calm. "I got it," she said. I came around the counter and she walked straight into my arms. For a while, we just stood there between the front table and the poetry shelf, holding each other while the old radiator knocked behind us. "I'm proud of you," I said. She pulled back and smiled. "I'm proud of me too." That was the moment I knew she had chosen for herself, and somehow that made me feel chosen too. Winter settled over Burlington slowly, snow on the porch rail, ice along the bookstore windows. Cold mornings when Emily came by before school, stealing one of my gloves because she said mine were warmer, even though I knew she had better ones in her bag. We became ordinary in the best possible way. She graded papers at my kitchen table while I cooked dinners that improved from terrible to almost decent. I kept a blanket on the porch swing because she liked to sit there even when it was too cold. She left books in my living room, not by accident anymore. I learned which tea she liked and stopped pretending I bought it for guests. In January, she gave me a key to her house. She did it while we were walking back from the grocery store, carrying bags in both hands. "There's a key in your coat pocket," she said. I looked at her. "Why?" "So you stop waiting on the porch when I'm 5 minutes late." That happened once. It happened 3 times. I didn't want to walk in like I owned the place. She smiled. "You don't own it, you're welcome in it." I could not answer right away. That was the kind of sentence that would have scared me once. Maybe it still did a little, but it also warmed something in me I had spent years trying not to need. A week later, I gave her a key to mine. I placed it inside a copy of the Mary Oliver book she had bought the first day she came into the store and left it on her kitchen table. She found it while making tea. "You put a house key in a poetry book?" she asked. "I run a bookstore. I have limited methods." She looked at the key, then at me, and her eyes softened. "This is very you." "I know." She kissed me then, smiling against my mouth. Spring came, and with it came the porch project. Not repairs this time, something new. Emily wanted flower boxes under the front windows. I said the windows were uneven and would make the boxes look crooked. She said old houses were allowed to have character. I said character was what people called bad measurements. She handed me a pencil and told me to measure twice and complain once. We spent 3 Saturdays building them. The third Saturday, she stood on the porch holding one end of the last box while I secured the bracket beneath it. Her hair was loose, and there was a streak of soil on her wrist from planting herbs earlier. The sun was warm on the steps. Somewhere down the street, a lawn mower started. She looked at me over the flower box and smiled. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." That was not a nothing smile. She glanced at the house, then at me. "I was just thinking that the first time I saw this place, I said it had good bones." "You did." I was right. I looked at the house, the painted living room, the repaired porch, the flower boxes, the swing that no longer creaked. Then I looked at her. "Yes," I said, "you were." That summer I asked her to move in, not with a big speech, not because rent made sense, not because her lease was ending, though it was. I asked her on the porch swing at dusk, while fireflies moved over the yard and her blue flower mug sat on the rail between us. "I like your mug in my cabinet," I said. She looked at me. "That's your opening." What? I had a better one, but it sounded like a man in a movie, and neither of us trusts that. She laughed. I took her hand. "I like your books on my table. I like your sweater on the chair. I like hearing you come in the back door. I like knowing what tea to buy. I like that the house feels less like something I'm repairing and more like somewhere we're living." Her fingers tightened around mine. I don't want you to move in because it's practical, I said. I want you to move in because I love you and I want to keep making room, not for a mug, for you. Emily stared at me, then her eyes filled. You love me, she whispered. I had been afraid of those words for so long that I expected them to feel heavy. They didn't. They felt like setting something down. Yes, I said, I love you. She laughed once through tears, then leaned forward and kissed me so suddenly I almost dropped the mug from the porch rail. I love you too, she said against my mouth. I held her face in both hands. The house behind us was old. The porch still had one soft board near the corner. The upstairs hallway still needed work because some projects wait until you are ready for them. Nothing was perfect, but I was not waiting for perfect anymore. Emily moved in at the end of August. We argued gently about where the books should go, then seriously about the couch, then laughed because both of us were too stubborn to admit the other had better taste. She brought too many mugs. I kept them all. She said my kitchen knives were a disgrace. I said no one needed that many pillows. She ignored me and bought more. And every morning when I came downstairs and saw her shoes by the door, something inside me settled again. Not because I believed nothing could ever go wrong, because now I believed we would tell the truth when it did. A year after she first said, "Then maybe you're the reason," I found the old roll of painter's tape in the drawer by the fireplace. The same one I had used as an excuse to run from the living room. I held it in my hand and laughed quietly. Emily came in from the kitchen. "What's funny?" I held up the tape. She recognized it immediately. "Oh," she said, "the famous escape tape. I should frame it. You should apologize to it. It had to carry a lot of emotional weight." I smiled and pulled her close. "I'm sorry to the tape." That was very brave. "Thank you." She slipped her arms around my waist and looked up at me. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't answered my message?" I did, more often than I told her. "I think I would have kept fixing this house," I said, "and it still would have been empty." Her smile faded into something softer. "It wasn't empty," she said. "It was waiting." I kissed her forehead. Maybe she was right. I used to think love would arrive like a storm, loud enough that I could not miss it. But love came into my life quietly. It came with poetry books and paint rollers, with bakery bags and porch coffee, with hard questions and patient answers. It came as a woman who saw my house, my fear, my silence, and somehow still believed there was something worth staying near. And it came as a joke that was not really a joke. "At this rate, you'll never get married. Then maybe you're the reason." She was right in a way neither of us fully understood that day. I was the reason she kept coming back, but she became the reason I finally stopped leaving. She did not fix me. That is not what love should be asked to do. She stood beside me while I learned how to stop running from rooms where the truth was waiting. Now on Saturday mornings we still sit on the porch swing with coffee. Sometimes we talk about school or the bookstore or what part of the house needs attention next. Sometimes we say nothing at all. The swing holds. The house holds. And when Emily reaches for my hand, I do not think about where to hide. I just take it. Because love, I have learned, is not only the brave thing you say once. It is the quiet thing you keep choosing every day after the door is open.